In the fourth part of this video on graphical user interfaces and event handling, we briefly introduce panels that can be drawn on in order to illustrate handling mouse click events. We begin by discussing how to create a simple drawing. In order to draw images, we must first create a class that extends JPanel. Then we must override the paint component method that would have been inherited from JPanel. Here is the signature of that method. Notice that it is declared protected. When we override it, we should also make it protected. It has one parameter, which is an object of type graphics. That is the object on which we invoke the methods needed to perform the drawing. The graphics class contains numerous methods that allow us to do various kinds of drawing. We will discuss only one of them at this point, which is the one we plan to use in the example programs. It is the method drawLine that is used to draw line segments. Here is the signature of that method. Notice that we must pass it the XY coordinates of the endpoints of the line segment that we wish to draw. We have seen that there is only one event associated with buttons, clicking the button. There are, however, a number of different events that a mouse can generate. There are two listener interfaces associated with mouse events. The first interface is the mouse listener interface, which defines the basic mouse events. The second is the mouse motion listener interface that defines events associated with moving the mouse. At this point we will discuss only the mouse listener interface and describe the 5 events that it defines. The first event, and the one with which we will be most concerned, is the mouse click event. When that event occurs, we usually want to know the coordinate of the point where the mouse was clicked. Clicking the mouse is actually comprised of 2 distinct events, pressing and then releasing the mouse. There are times when it is important to distinguish between them. The other 2 events defined in the mouse listener interface are when the mouse enters or exits a component. Because the mouse listener interface contains 5 methods, we must implement all 5, providing code to handle each of the events, even though we may only really be interested in performing some action in response to one of them. Now we will examine a program that allows the user to click the mouse on various points on the window and successively connect the dots. This program will consist of 2 classes. Line drawing is the first of them. Notice that it is the class that extends JPanel, so it is the class that will actually be performing the drawing. It has one instance variable, which is an array list of type point. The class point has 2 public instance variables, x and y, that define the coordinates of a point. This class is really an example of what in other languages would have been a record or structure. For that reason, it does not adhere to the standard practice of making the instance variables private. This array list will keep track of the coordinates of the points as they are clicked. The constructor registers the panel as the listener for mouse events by passing this to the add_mouse_listener method. Let's scroll down to the methods needed to implement mouse listener. Next is the method mouse clicked that is called when the mouse is clicked. We extract the coordinates of the point where it was clicked from the mouse event parameter by invoking the getPoint method on that event object. Then we add it to the array list. The final step is to call the repaint method. We cannot call the paint component method directly because we are not in possession of the graphics object that must be passed to it. Instead, by calling repaint, we make a request of the window manager to schedule a call to paint component for us. The next 4 empty methods must be present. Omitting any of them will cause a compilation error because then we will not be implementing the mouse listener interface. Finally, let's scroll down to the paint component method. This method must be overridden in order to draw on the panel. It first checks that there are at least 2 points in the array list before it then draws line segments. It then draws a line segment from the first point to the second to the third, and so on, using the draw line method of the graphics class. To have a complete program, we need a main method. We elected to put it in a separate class. The constructor of this class adds an anonymous object of the class that we just examined to the window. The main method, as always, instantiates the window object and makes it visible. Let's run it. Notice that it draws the line segments as we click the various points. Next, we discuss an adapter class for mouse events. Some listeners, like the mouse listener, require many events to be handled. In our previous example, that meant that we needed to implement four empty methods for the events that we didn't really want to respond to. The listener adapter class implements the listener interface by defining empty methods for each event. The benefit to extending the adapter class rather than implementing the listener interface is that only the needed events must be handled. So now let's look at how the same program would be written using the adapter class. The first thing to notice is that the drawing window class no longer implements mouse listener, but it also does not extend mouse adapter. It can't extend mouse adapter because a class can only extend one other class, and this class already extends jpanel. Let's scroll down to the mouse clicked method. Instead, we have made the listener an anonymous object of an anonymous inner class. So now the mouse clicked method is in the anonymous class defined within the call to add mouse listener. Lambda expressions are not possible in this case because we are not implementing an interface. But even when we used an interface, a lambda expression wouldn't work because mouse listener is not a functional interface because it contains more than one method. The drawing window class is the same as before. Because the behavior is also unchanged, we will forego running the program, but you may wish to do so to confirm that fact.